Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About It, Destigmatizing Childhood Sexual Crimes. Many people don't want to talk about this. We do. I'm really happy to have with me today Terry Jo. She's written a book called The Abortion Who Refused to Die. Just the title of that book, right, I think is a telling of her childhood. So I'm excited to have her with us here today. Terry Jo, in your own words, I always like to ask why you are motivated to be with us here today. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you and let you just tell us in your words the motivation for sharing your story with us.
Yeah, I just felt like I had to say my story. I couldn't hold it in. Um, it was keeping me up at night with nightmares and poor sleep. And so I just got up in the night and started writing my stories down. That was like 10 years ago. And then the stories got better and then they got organized and they gradually became a book. And I couldn't afford therapy. And I kind of think that it would have costed a lot because that guy had a
Right.
lot of work to do. So I just wrote my stories down. And I think I just couldn't keep the stories in. They wanted to be told, and yeah, I wanted some sort of justice, or at least for people to know what I went through, and not just be some secret thing. Especially when my parents are kind of, laughing and they got away with it, and you know. To do something like that to a kid and then, enjoy it and then gloat on it for my whole life. It's like I just had to, I had to tell somebody. So I
Right.
did.
No,
And
yep,
now it's
that's
a book.
awesome. And it is very cathartic. As I talk to people, it is one of the things that you learn is you really heal through writing those things down, right? Like one of our guests called it she did diaries, and that really helped her heal. So I mean, I think it's such a beautiful gift to share with people that it does help your nightmares and it does help those things. So with that context, I would like you just take your time with this, tell as much as you're comfortable with. If you'd like to just share the story to give everyone kind of a starting place for our conversation today, that would be great. And again, take your time with it, okay? And I'm going to give it
Yeah.
back to you.
Okay. Well, my mom, abortion wasn't legal when my mom was pregnant with me, and she really wanted to not have a second child. So she went to my grandmother, who's like the local witch, and got the herbs to cause an abortion, or a miscarriage, But my um, great grandma gave her some some herbs, and my mom took them all and almost killed herself trying to get rid of me.
Oh,
But
wow.
she was like sick for 3 days with the bleeding and the cramps, and she thought she miscarried me, and she's successful. And she said that even though it almost killed her, it was worth it just to abort me because she didn't want to have me at all. And then a couple months later, she found out she was still pregnant with me, and she got really angry. And then, I was born, and she blamed me for
Mm.
all the things that went wrong in her life. And then she had like a series of mistakes and poor choices throughout her life, and she blamed all those on me too. So I was being punished for even being born or refusing to die. And she always called me, the abortion who refused to die.
She
And
called you that.
oh, all the time. Oh, so much. I mean, she never let me forget that she hated me, the fact that I was alive at all. And she kind of reserved the right to kill me at any time, because, I shouldn't have been alive at all to begin with. And so, I had no rights as a human to, expect anything or, I was just a victim, and
Mhm.
she treated the other kids bad too, because she's a sadist and a psychopath. Uh, but she treated me the worst because somehow, her whole miserable life was my fault, and all of her dreams that didn't come true were because of me, and not her own poor choices.
Right,
You
right.
know.
Yes, I actually can very much relate to that. So you were the oldest and you had how many siblings?
Actually, I was the second
Oh, you were the
oldest.
second.
Yeah,
Okay.
my mom had my older brother who she wanted, and that's all she wanted, and then
Oh, okay.
and but then I came along and kind of ruined the party, and uh then she had several more kids after me, so kind of like, well, whatever, and she just had a whole bunch more babies, and then uh it's just more poor choices, but no, but yeah. So yeah, I was the second oldest.
Okay. All right. And so go ahead and continue. I mean, there's so many, it's a lot to tell, of course, but what are the other important parts of your story that you'd like to share?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It was bad when I was born, and then my dad went to Vietnam, and my mom just fell apart. And then she married a abusive second husband, and then everything was a nightmare. Just abuse for all of us kids. And
Right. And it was his name Dell.
yeah.
Yeah, and so there was this theme that I saw a lot in your book that you felt that the community at large ostracized you. Is that how it felt for you as a child? You write quite a bit about that. That
Yeah,
your mother
yeah.
was very unliked in the community and that sort of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, she was very unliked, and we were completely ostracized. I mean, I didn't really put it in the book, but we're ostracized to the point where they basically, I don't know, I guess it's an old-fashioned idea where, like, the daughter of the whore, the daughter of the town whore is who everybody can like go rape and beat, and everything else, like they're the target. I mean, like divorced women are bad, and then
Right.
their kids are bastards. Kind of the same thing. Whereas, but basically, everybody in town knew that we were having abuse in our family, and they made jokes about it. And we'd go to the grocery store, and they'd yell stuff out at us. And then even when I was like 10 or 11, men in the town would come up to me and say things like, you're the daughter of the town whore, so if
Oh
we
my
ever want to.
goodness.
Yeah, even though mom wasn't a whore, not at all, she was other things, but she wasn't that. you know
Wow.
but
They would
they
say
would.
this out loud to you at 10.
Yeah, like at the grocery store.
How big was this community that you lived in?
About 2,000 people. It was basically a
Small.
lumber, yeah. So it's like a lumber camp that grew into a town, but we never really lost that whole lumber camp mentality, the whole rowdy violence.
Right. I'll
You
tell
know,
you it right. In your book, you talk a lot about like they would drop you off, the bus would drop you off, and then the kids would scream out the window at your
oh
mother
yeah.
and that sort of thing. I mean, really, I was taken aback when I mean, it felt like just a really incredibly cruel, rejecting community that you were raised in. Not only were you
Yeah,
receiving it in your home, but in the
yeah.
community at large.
Yeah, and I didn't really mind the community. I mean, that didn't really bother me because, I'm the same as them. I just yell back a big F you, ha 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 ha,
Mm.
boisterous and crude, so at least in their way, they knew about it and they were talking about it, which is way better than being secrecy.
But
But I
that's
mean, it
still
was,
so hurtful. I mean, you can fight back,
yeah.
but that's so hurtful.
Yeah, I mean, it was even worse because the fathers would say, oh, you're our future victim for abuse if we ever want to rape anybody, or we'll just make you the town whore. But they pointed me out to their sons. So even in school, like being in seventh grade or so, kids would say, oh, ho, ho, if we ever rape anybody, it's going to be you, ha, 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 and so
See,
I starved myself so extensively that there was nothing desirable into me until I got to be about 15 or 16, because I was so thin, but I didn't have any womanly curves or even start my period till I was almost 16 because I was so self-starving myself so
oh
bad,
wow.
but I
Wow.
was
So that
just.
there was right. And I think a lot of women do that. we either overeat or undereat, just try to change the appearance and the,
Yeah.
not that any child, by the way, should be any way sexually seductive to anybody. It's these sick people, but that's the message, right? And so getting back to that, there was another part. I mean, as I read your story, these abusers are, like Dell, before you talk about him sexually abusing you, you talk about this stack of porn by his chair. And I
Yeah.
start watching all of these rules that should not be allowed, right? That somebody should have
Oh,
said that should be at least hidden if you're going to have it in the house. He was
yeah.
allowed to have it there. And then you talk about another time where the Afternoon Delight song would come on and they would get
Oh,
up,
yeah.
the parents, and
Yeah.
but this is you see how those things are so horribly abusive. They stand up in front of all you kids and masturbate each other. All of these things are, I mean, I just want you to understand that your house had time and time again things that should not be allowed around children, right, Terry
Yeah.
Joe?
It was so extreme, you know? I mean,
Right.
one time it's not in the book, but one time I think I was about 11 or so, but my parents' idea of sex education was they put a blanket out in the backyard and had sex on a blanket out in the backyard in
Oh,
front of all the kids.
oh
And
my goodness.
I know, and I refused to go out there and, see him. I saw him rolling around and getting ready, but I ran in the house and hid when, the big demonstration was going on. But all my brothers and sisters sat around on the edge of the blanket right
Oh
there.
my God. But
It wasn't a huge blanket
right. And
either.
you talk about the sexual abuse with your mother, but I mean with Dell, but you don't call her a pedophile. She was a sexual abuser. What you just explained, that's a
Yeah.
sexual abuser, Terry Joe. And there was that in the book. You see all of these. It broke my heart. Like you said, your brother drilled a hole into their wall. Well, I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
to watch and then masturbate. But the
Yeah.
truth is, they were really asking you guys to do that through their behavior, don't you think?
Oh, they were. I mean, well, the blanket thing, I mean, that's pretty obvious. And,
Oh my
um,
goodness.
and yeah, they kind of enjoyed it. I mean,
Of
they
course they
knew,
did.
when they beat us kids, and then they'd go right in the bedroom, which was right by the living room adjoining, and they'd have really loud sex with the door open, and anybody could have just walked over and looked in the door, and we younger kids didn't, but my older brother
Right.
did, and you know uh, but yeah, it was just really, they just seemed to enjoy the public performance, you
Right.
know. And
Which is it is that kind of spirit of incest, right? That it's just your whole house was sexualized. There wasn't any place that you
yeah.
could go. And then beyond that, the emotional cruelty of your mother and your stepfather. I mean, he called you, what was the name that I wrote it down because it was horrible. It was, he called you pig girl. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
because you had pigs that you were taking care of, but just
Yeah.
on and on and on. There was no, it didn't seem like there was anything kind that I could see in your home. And I didn't have
Yeah,
very much
that's
kindness in my home as well. And so I
yeah.
understand, but uh, you know, um, yeah, it's just so much, Terry Joe. I don't even know where to begin
Yeah.
in your story, right? Because it was constant,
Yeah.
like the time that the fire started, and then he comes
Yeah.
into your room, your stepfather comes into your room with an
Yeah.
axe. Share with us how that made you feel. I mean, you were just constantly being violated, even in your sleep. There was nothing
Yeah.
safe.
There was nothing safe. It wasn't even a concept or anything I hoped for, the idea of being safe just uh that didn't happen. If I was like in the woods or in the dark where nobody could find me, then I felt safe. Or, away from home in the strawberry fields, I
Right.
felt safe, or even at school, I felt safe. But yeah, when you wake up in the middle of the night and there's some guy screaming at you with an axe, and it wasn't even a little axe, it was one of those big lumberjack axes, like,
Right, and right, it's such a
like
drastic
Paul
way to
Bunyan.
right, exactly. Right, and that somehow you were responsible for this fire that started in the living room underneath your bedroom, right? Isn't that
Yeah,
right?
you know. But I mean, that was just sadly some kind of strange routine. I mean, I got blamed for everything, and that's just what they did. I knew it wasn't right, but uh, you couldn't even finish thinking about one thing, and then some other giant drama would come up. You know?
Right. It's hard to articulate when you don't come from households like that. My home was very much the same, just from one outlandish abusive thing to the next. Like you couldn't even decipher what was going to happen next. And the problem is that moves us right into that question about then the trauma aftermath that stays with us and in our body. Can you talk to us about the things that you felt really were a result of coming from a home like that as you grew, right? Because now
Yeah.
we mature and we become women, we have our own families, but the abuse and the trauma doesn't leave us and it plays out in our life. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you felt that played out in your life?
Yeah, um, well, even my name, my mom named me Terry Joe after her old boyfriend. She just took
Right.
the E off of the Joe so that my father would hate me, and then she could, suffocate me in the crib, because abortion, that whole thing didn't work. And, so even my name is a constant reminder. And
Right.
and physical. I mean, like, they used to haul me up and by my arm and, beat me. And so my shoulder, it chronically hurts, and they'd wail on me with the paddle on one side of my body mostly. So I have sciatica, that hurts a lot. And that's been chronic pain for, 30, 40 years, and
Wow.
I mean, that's just the physical
The
things right
physical.
there,
Right.
and
Right.
mental stuff. I mean, I know I have mental problems and PTSD. I mean, that's just,
Mhm.
you can expect that, and I
Right.
was suicidal for a lot of years. And it was really was really messed up. I mean, that's just, the stuff that, I still live with, you know and
Right.
now, uh now, after I wrote my book and published it, I feel freer now. And my mom died a year ago, so I feel safe, that she's not going to and get me, you know but yeah. So for me, I kind of feel the aftermath all the time, and
Right.
constantly. And I'm still happy, and I still have a faith in God, so that helps, and the support of my wonderful husband, you know
Right.
so
Right.
so that's good, and um, so all that's good. But yeah, I'm
Right.
living
See,
with
and
it every day.
right, and you talk about suicide, growing up for me, suicide was really my only way out. And when you're a child, you don't really understand how even to do that. But as you age, the very first time that I ever thought about suicide was when I got my license and I had a car. And I remember driving up to my parents' house because we lived quite a ways out of town on this mountain. And I thought, if I get this car up to a really high speed and just crash into that wall, and I even imagined what the smell of the twisted metal would be like, because felt like the only way out of the pain and the torture, right? Because to go back into
Yeah.
his house, he started molesting me at raping me. I don't like to actually use the word molestation when it's rape because
Yeah,
it's
can't
not the
be
strength of right, exactly. And I hate to minimize these crimes that happen to us, but I was still raped until I left at 17. And so the only way out for me was suicide. And is that much of what was kind of left in you as well, just to have the pain and the torture
uh,
kind of end?
um for me, it was like, I shouldn't have ever been alive to begin with. And I always expected to die, so it's not like I'd have to make any effort to
Oh, I
kill
see.
myself,
Right.
and so it was just more of a natural result,
The
and
theme
then
the theme was in you.
yeah, and then when I got older, that's when I felt suicidal. But one time, the voices in my head that were telling me that, you're worthless, kill yourself, they got so loud that I recognized them as my mom's voice, and I was like,
That's
that's,
wise.
and then I thought, oh, that's what she's always wanted. If she couldn't kill me, then she instilled in me that idea that I should kill myself, and better late than never, kind of thing with my mom, and
Well, and see, Terry Joe, what I just heard you say is one of the things that I always ask is, can you recognize the rejection left in your life from abuse? Because a lot of people struggle with that. Now, people like you and me, it was
yeah,
spoken to us, right? My mother
yeah,
really,
it's
really,
pretty obvious.
right. I mean, I feel like you did. My mother rejected me from the womb. And, there's this beautiful Psalms where David says, my mother and my father have forsaken me. Not a lot of people, and maybe there are millions of us as well, but we don't talk about these things. I felt very forsaken by my mother. She was made
Yeah,
it very clear that she didn't want me and she wanted me the least of all the children.
yeah,
And so I always felt like I just had it in for me. So from the time I hit her womb, and
yeah.
that rejection is strong. It stays with
It
you, right?
is,
It's very strong.
you know. I mean, what's more powerful than a mother rejecting her
There
child?
isn't anything as far as I'm
Yeah,
concerned.
yeah,
Right. Well, because it's a birthright to be loved. And
yeah,
so when that birthright is not only not given, but the truth is they told you, I don't want you. I wish I tried to kill you. That
yeah,
message that lives with you, I hear you go back to that theme. That was a strong theme. And so when
yeah,
you said I heard those voices and you said I realized it was the voice of my mother, see those things often I'm so mean to myself inside, you guys, it's terrible, right? And then
yeah,
I'll think that's my mom's voice. She used to make me watch her in a bathtub while she would groom her body.
yeah,
and
barf.
but I always felt, here I was just a little girl, but she was sexy and I wasn't. I was a little girl. I wasn't
Yeah,
supposed to be sexy, but you know what I mean? Those themes stay with us. And so that
yeah.
that theme of rejection, how has that played out in your life, Terry Joe?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's a permanent thing. I mean, I feel like a constant loser and a constant failure. And and I'm actually, I have a good marriage, and worked hard and I have a good job and doing good things for my boys. They grew up nice. So I'm technically a winner, but I sure don't feel
Mhm.
like it. And
Mhm.
I'm always constantly kind of doing little things to make myself feel better, and it's mostly working, but
Right.
yeah, but I don't have adult friends, I don't have female friends especially, and
Mhm.
guys suck too.
Right. You know,
So I don't have friends, you know.
well, and I understand that though, because I even write about that. But my both of my parents were pedophiles. They were both very unkind to me. And so what happens is no, men and women are not trustworthy. It's very
Yeah.
difficult for us to come
Yes.
through that and then want to have friends. Like I'm going to be 60 next year, and just now am I really starting to incorporate friends in my life. And the truth be known, I hate to say this, but I really like a lot of time by myself. It suits
Yeah,
me just
yeah,
well to spend 90%. I mean, like my children, I love to spend time with my children and my grandchildren and my husband. But
yeah,
other than that, I'm kind of good, I'll entertain,
yeah,
but it's, you know what I mean? It's all laid out and we have dinner and everything's going on, and you know what I mean? But
yeah,
that theme, Terry Joe, stays with us. And so the one thing I love about being a Christian is that adoption that I get to have. Like, you're my sister in Christ. And that matters to me because I feel like an orphan a lot. Does that
yeah.
does that resonate with you?
Yeah, it really does, you know.
Mhm.
So if an orphans got lucky, I
They
mean,
got different parents, right?
yeah, or none at all is an improvement, But it's just worse things than being an orphan,
Right.
uh,
And tell me
you know.
what the worst things are than being an orphan.
Wow, just having abusive parents that you can't escape and they punish you every day, and then the constant abuse, they're kind of creative, and the ways they would abuse us, And so, but the constant fear, the constantly being
Mm.
trapped, and, you know, I mean, in a lot of ways, I grew up with so little, human interaction because my parents kept, decent people away from me that, in a lot of ways, I'm feral to say the least and probably more of a wild animal than anything else, you know?
You talked about that though. You talked about, I mean, I really saw that in your book where you talked about the social skills that you didn't have.
Yeah.
And then when I read about the community that you were in as well, I mean, honestly, Terry Joe, that's a pretty normal response for you coming through what you came through. I mean, if you
Yeah.
could be kind to yourself and think of it that way, that's a pretty normal response. You were never taught that. And you talk
Yeah.
about this language that you and your siblings created. Can you tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, I think that people instinctively, make up language. They would do that no matter who you are, what you are. You would make
Hmm.
up a
Hmm.
language, and we had a lot of emotional noises and a lot of hand gestures because the room was so dark. We didn't have a lot of facial expressions, So,
Set
but
this
we,
up for us. How old are you guys? What's going on in your life? I
yeah,
mean, I had a
yeah.
hard time following that, I'm
Yeah.
curious about this. So, what you're saying is we created communication between ourselves, right?
Yeah, we knew a few words and stuff, but I was like 4. So my younger brother was like 3-ish, and my younger sister was like 2-ish, and then the baby, and my older brother was about 8, I guess. But we just started making up our own noises because mom didn't really talk to us, and we're in that dark room basically alone for, pushing 9 months, But
For 9 months, you were in a room that had limited light and
yeah,
hardly any interaction. What were you?
basically.
Is this? And you guys found yourselves living in a house like this that, or I mean, I'm not sure, where were you guys at this time in your
Yeah.
life?
Well, lived way out in the country, and my father had volunteered for Vietnam,
Okay,
and
so he's
and
now left the family.
yeah, and mom's like totally angry and then totally depressed. I mean, to where she
Okay.
wouldn't couldn't even function really, and and then she forbade us to come out and bother her, because she was, in such a fragile,
Okay,
depressed
I'm
place.
understanding.
Yeah, and so we just stayed in the room, day after day for 9 months with, she barely talked at all, no TV, no getting out, no going outside, and
Terry
and
Joe,
so we,
that's heartbreaking.
yeah, I mean, at least we didn't get beat because we were safe in the room, so we had a safe place to be.
So you
It's
would
just when,
just gesture to each other to make communication.
yeah, and make little noises, like go like this to ask for something, to ask, and with the hand, like please. And then when we didn't get it, we'd be like
Ah,
no, and our put a hand over our heart, like, and go like that to express pain, or
ah.
anger,
So
but
you guys had this, wow.
you know
I'm almost
and
don't know what to say next because it breaks my heart for you. It does.
What's funny is we had our own goofy words too. I'll add a few. So let's see. Um, like grrr, you know, everything's so blur. I want more. Ow,
You still
you know,
remember.
yeah. I was the main talker, and
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
my husband understands because that's why I still make some of those noises, but like blah, the world is blah, but my younger sisters still use words like that. They don't know where they came from, but there are natural words.
And you carried them with you.
Yeah.
We actually had another family who I learned later in life, their father was also sexually abusive to them, and he was just a very cruel man. But
Yeah.
we had our own language that we would use because our parents couldn't decipher it. And we used it
Yeah.
into adulthood. And
Yeah.
I mean, we would like, I would see her, she's actually now passed away. It was terrible. She just used drugs and alcohol to the point where she died, and we were the same
Yeah. That's
age, and it broke
terrible.
my heart because so many people don't make it out. But you know what, every time I'd see her, because we both lived in Vancouver, Washington for years, and I'd run
Yeah.
into her, and she would she would bring up that talk, and we knew it and nobody else could
Yeah.
understand us, but we knew exactly what we were saying. And I
Yeah.
think it's for the same reason. It also kept you safe so that your mother couldn't decipher it. Does, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? That's why we did it, because our fathers were so cruel. We didn't
Yeah.
want them to know what we were saying. Wow, that's remarkable. And so it does stay with us. I mean, that's the thing though. Those are formative years, Terry Jo, very formative years.
Yeah. You know, and I was just, a wild animal because mom wasn't talking to us. When I went to first grade, I was pretty spectacular. With, that my first grade teacher was
Oh,
like,
how difficult.
she put me in front of the kids and had to ask for their support to help me, but they had to teach me how to talk. And as a group, my first grade
In
class,
kindergarten or in first
actually
grade.
first grade, yeah, because they didn't have kindergarten.
Wow.
But all the kids on recess would try to teach me the ABCs and just words, and
Wow.
you know and it was funny, and they always wanted to sit near me so they could poke me with the crayon like every 5 minutes so that I would pay attention because I had no attention span.
Oh,
You know,
wow.
you know.
And that was another theme that really came through in your book, that I don't even know how to say it. Again, it's heartbreaking for me because you had so much of a public spectator kind of thing going on, that not
Yeah,
only were you abused in your home, but then when you went out in public, you had to be abused there too. And so
yeah,
you couldn't, you had no safe place, like no safe place. But you said you like school. So, but being stood up and saying we need to help her again, that's kind of making us a spectacle publicly
yeah,
out of you, right?
yeah. You know, I was always a spectacle, always the town joke. And um, I just
That's
got used to
terrible
it.
though.
I mean, I didn't even worry about it. I guess, I didn't really care because that's just how life was, and I would rather have people, yell out the truth than, pretend, that everything was great. That's what I can't tolerate is sugar coating. And, I'm kind of glad that at least the town, they didn't sugarcoat it.
Well, somebody could have been nice to you, Terry Joe. But I mean, somebody could have been
It
nice. I'm
could have
just gonna
been, but
say.
yeah,
And
but
now
no.
you wonder why you don't want friends. You know what I mean? And you have a
Yeah,
difficult time. And so part of this exploration that I like to do with, people that came through tragedy is that so that other people could understand. Because, after writing my book, I've gotten some, and I know your husband responded to that, but some of these comments that come in that are like, oh, I just can't even be compassionate with you because you should have killed your dad and instead you wanted to hug him. They just have no understanding.
yeah,
And
you
so,
know.
God is my witness. I want to do these for as long as I'm able to, just to bring understanding. Like when somebody listens to the inside of your story, Terry Jo, you're doing everything that normally you should be doing. So I don't want you to feel like it's abnormal, because for the experiences that you've lived, you've done
Yeah.
a hell of a good job, don't you think?
Yeah, well, God did a good job. You
Yeah.
know?
Oh, I love him.
You
He's my best friend. Let me tell
Yeah,
you, he's my best friend.
yeah, no, after I got baptized, he started putting me back together because, I was so broken that, I just, I could do some good things, but not really a lot of good things and not very well, so, but no, so if I look, good or successful or normal, that's just a miracle from God,
So
because I should be.
yeah, I think, no, let's talk about that for a minute, because I read your book, and my father was a very dark man. Like people could see the demonic presence with my father. He had red
Yeah.
pins in his eyes. And I mean, these are
Oh,
people that weren't part of the family. And when he
yeah.
would be raping you, you could see that red in his eyes.
Yeah.
So one of the things you talked about though was that your mother, see, the scare tactic that abusers use is often demons, the occult. I was scared to death
Yeah.
as a child. I mean, I thought there was
Yeah.
demons everywhere. And so where was God in all of this as a child for you? Can you talk to us about that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, well, I've always been kind of a nature girl, and so for me, when I was really young, like 5, I just would look at the stars and the dandelions and nature in general, the animals, and it was all so beautiful and overwhelming that I just thought that somebody had to have made this. This didn't happen by accident, so the creation just yells out that God made
Mm.
us, and and I always felt like there was a God. So that's when I was little, and then when I was a little older, I read the Bible. I found a torn old ripped up Bible on the beach, and I took that home and read it in secret.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Wow. Isn't that remarkable? God
I
will
know.
find us. I'm telling you.
Yeah, somebody else threw out a Bible on the beach, ripped it in half and threw it out, and I found it and read it, and
Wow.
so that gave me a lot of strength, you know,
And
and
how old were you when you found that Bible?
probably about 8 or 9,
Oh, young.
yeah, and so I read it when I finally got a whole Bible and I could read the whole thing. It was just an amazing gift, It's just like, wow, all these things that I've been missing.
That is such a cool story though.
Yeah,
Yeah, I found Jesus at 4, and my mom said to me later in life, we did not take you to church. We didn't know how you
yeah,
found him. I just met him in my room. It wasn't like an apparition or anything, but I knew he was with me. Like I just felt this angelic presence kind of. And
yeah,
I never let, no matter what anybody said about God, like you're saying, I just knew
yeah,
he was there and I needed him.
yeah,
I needed him a whole lot in my childhood,
yeah,
but I didn't
you
really
know,
know him much. Do you know what I mean? So how
yeah,
cool that you had a Bible. That's
yeah, and then I kind of, knew that my parents were obviously bad. It's not too hard for anyone to figure that
right.
out. And I figured I was a good kid, and that if I got beat to death or whatever, I'd just go to heaven, And
Wow.
so at the worst possible scenario, I would go to heaven, So I believe that.
Because your parents were not teaching you about God. I read in your book
Yeah,
that this is a remarkable story that your mother actually wrote to Charles Manson.
yeah.
What did
Fan
that,
club.
I mean, it's not really funny, even though we're smiling because we don't know what else to do. But tell us how that made you feel when she writes to this
Yeah.
horrible man. And
Well,
she wants to actually become kind of like him, doesn't
oh
she? I mean,
yeah,
that's what that
hardcore.
yeah, talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, you know, we all knew, we had all heard about Charles Manson, at the time, because he's
Helter
big news
Skelter.
back. Yeah, and I read the book, and so I was familiar with it already, and then my mom, she watched the Helter Skelter TV special, because she's kind of too lazy to read very much, and I'd read the whole book already, and
Mhm.
so she got totally inspired by the made for TV miniseries, and then she somehow found his address and wrote him, but she was convinced that he was her soulmate, and her one true love, and they had so much in common, the same fantastic fantasies and the basically psychopath type personality that
Right. Well,
I
full
think that I
control, it's full control
yeah,
over people.
yeah, and I think that mom was actually correct in that he was her soulmate, because I saw
Wow.
so many similarities there, you know and so she wrote him the letter, and he responded back, because she's actually fairly intelligent. She wrote a good letter, because he only writes people back that are worthwhile, because he actually gets a ton of fan mail, from
Wow.
crazy people.
Right,
And
exactly, which we are not, by the way.
yeah, I kind of enjoy it. I'm a little crazy, but I enjoy it.
Well,
But you
you
know,
know what we're saying, not criminally
yeah,
insane by
yeah,
any
not
means.
criminally insane. Yeah, but yeah, mom wrote him the letter, and he wrote her back, and she was so inspired that they started having beer parties at our house to, get access to a large group of teenagers, and she actually started building her little um, group of followers, and it was actually working out pretty good, with some of the, you know, more or less social reject girls in our town, from bad families, which is what, that's Charles's style. That's who he targeted, and, but I kind of ruined it for her because I let the girls know what was going on. And then they goaded my mom a little bit, like, "Oh yeah, we like Charles Manson. Tell us all about it." And then my mom went insane and terrified all the girls, with her like two or
Wow.
3 hour rant on Charles Manson and Hitler and all the top stars, you
Oh
know,
my
all star
goodness.
team of psychos. But she terrorized the girls and they all abandoned her, and mom couldn't understand. It's more in the book, with the helter skelter
Right.
fantasies, but it was actually pretty funny, I kind of thought.
Well, and I understand you saying that, but at the crux of it, the funny thing is, in another interview that I had, her father was very much into Adolf Hitler. So was
Yeah,
my
mom
father.
too.
But the
Yeah,
funny thing was my mother read Helter Skelter and I remember her talking about that book for a long time. So what I really think is that these people, particularly people who damage and sexually abuse children, they're really dark people, and I think they
yeah,
like the power that these other
yeah,
dark people have, this ultimate
yeah,
control over human beings, right?
yeah.
So it's not really funny. I think that they're really drawn, and I understand the flippant behavior that you have around this. I get that.
Yeah,
But really your mother was a dark person and she was drawn to
yeah.
that kind of darkness in life, right?
Yeah, she really was. I mean, she
Yeah.
loved Adolf Hitler, and
Oh,
you
see,
know,
it's such a weird
she loved
that's
loved him so much.
bizarre.
And even when we were little kids, mom always talked about Ma Barker and her group of her kids that she made into criminals. Um,
Oh,
and
that's right.
she wanted us to, stage crimes where she could be the crime boss, and because we'd be too young to go to prison, and
Wow.
mom always said her dream job was to be a hitman because she could get paid to kill people, you know, and it was only the fact that she'd probably get caught and go to prison that discouraged her from her dream job, you know.
Wow, that's an aspiration. Well, you know
Yeah,
I call everything that she did to her children, to me, that's murder. So you know what? She
yeah,
successfully was an assassin because she left a
yeah,
lot of murder and death in your lives. But you know what?
yeah,
We're overcomers, and which moves me kind of into the other question. We've talked a lot about what was left in your life and the rejection and all of these difficult things. Can you identify some strengths that you got coming through that house and share those with
yeah.
us?
Well, some of the strengths aren't really good strength. Like, I mean, I feel I could handle any situation and be successful, but like go to prison, I'd probably, do really well in prison, or uh, a war, I'd probably do pretty good in a war. So if I'm strong, it's kind of like I'm strong like a monster, not strong like a hero. And the weaknesses is I'm kind of missing a lot of things that people have, normal things that people have, like trust,
Mhm.
and so trust is kind of replaced by calculation, like what are my chances of succeeding, and how much can I get out of a friend before they dump me, that kind of thing,
Mhm.
and or paranoia. I got plenty of that. So um I don't know. It's really hard. I don't think there's really any good results from the abuse from me. It's just, I'm a shattered person. And, and the only good part is, my husband, who understood and supported me, and, and the miracle from God for, saving me when I got baptized and kind of rebuilding me,
Mhm.
so,
But
where I can find.
you're a successful mother, right? So talk
Yeah,
about
you know,
that. You know what? And think
yeah,
about this. You didn't have a mother that taught you how to be a mom.
yeah,
But I know that, you know what? I mean, I know a little bit about you guys, and I know that you've done a good job with your kids. That's
yeah,
a remarkable strength to actually build what
yeah.
you were never taught.
Yeah, well, I read a lot of biographies and stuff about, people that were good examples. And
Mm,
so I
mhm.
used their example, you know, and um but yeah, and you just, choose to do the right thing, and uh, and so basically I just thought, well, I'll just choose to do the right thing. Or if I'm just that bad, I won't have kids, if I can't do it right, so
So, and
I
see,
had.
and that is the strength, right? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
Yeah,
interrupt you.
yeah, okay, yeah. Well, I guess, but the power to choose to do the right thing,
Mhm,
and just say, oh, that's bad, nope, 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 and just go away from it. You don't have to
mhm.
think about it, just turn your feet around and go the other way, you know
Right.
uh,
And our
you know
parents ran headlong into those bad situations,
I
right?
know. They
But you,
create them,
right, and it's funny when you talk about your strengths, you say, if I were put into a war, I'd do fine. And the truth was our childhood was a war. I mean,
yeah,
like we lived through that, but you also called yourself a monster. I'd be like strong like a monster. And the second you said that, it made me think of your mother's voice, and I'll tell you why. In your book, you talk about she had you watch these old movies and stuff, and she'd say
yeah,
those monsters are real and all of those things. So
yeah,
these themes that stay with us, that you're not a monster because you have the strength to live through it. I call that resiliency. And I think our past did give us resilience because in my job where I was, there was a lot of stress in that job, but it didn't affect me. And my counselor used to always say, no one's getting raped or murdered, Jody. So, I
yes,
I
win.
could right, we could
Yeah,
handle it. So I'd look around and
yeah,
I'd think, what are you guys freaking out about? You know what I mean?
yeah,
Because my dad wasn't in the room and these guys all seemed pretty
yeah,
reasonable. And so, I do think that we can see that as a strength, Terry Joe. I do. I think
yeah,
it's because you probably could make it through a lot of circumstances should something bad happen in this country one day. I think we'd all be pretty good survivors, right? And
yeah.
our hyper vigilance would certainly be showing us what's next, right?
Yes. Yeah, I think so.
Right.
Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, so there are positives. Did you feel like, so one of the things that's really difficult, and I've never asked anybody this question, but I'd like to talk to you about that. Comfort in childhoods that we came from was non-existent. So as a child, the only comfort that I really could find was taking a hot bath. I had really severe leg pains all of my childhood that would wake me up and be debilitating. Like sometimes I couldn't walk through them, but I'd go run a hot bath, and that gave me enough comfort to get through my childhood. Really, I didn't have a whole lot of comfort food. I was quite heavy really early on. And so I went to food all the time. But there weren't really other comforts. When I had children, I used them a lot for comfort. But this is your story. And I wonder, what things in life have you found that have been real comforts to you? Have you found some comforts that work?
Um, yeah, I mean, when I was a kid, there really wasn't any comforts at all. I mean,
Mhm,
if there was anything, my parents would destroy it, because we weren't allowed to be comfortable, you
mhm,
know. And now, just or even when I was a kid, just being away from them, being in the woods or being somewhere where they couldn't get me, up in a tree or, hiding in the dark or somewhere where they couldn't find me, that was a comfort, and being at school or even the strawberry fields, even though we're working in the hot sun all day, that was still a safe place,
mm.
and so I didn't get any food. There's no way I could have had any comfort in food. I wish I could have had some food.
Yeah.
you know, but and when I got older, just living my own life, far away from them was, a comfort, and the only thing,
Right.
that really uh, has been a real comfort is, my husband understanding and supporting me, despite everything,
Hmm.
and, and then my boys, but, but I mean, like now, I mean, I do little nice things for myself, buy a little present or, ice cream,
I love that.
something,
Right. That's
but,
good. I'm glad. That's good.
yeah, no,
So
just do little fun things,
I love that. No, that's beautiful. So you said, which, the truth is, I really believe that we should not stay around and in relationship with people that are so abusive unless they've done
Yeah,
this foundational life change, which probably they're not going to do. And at a minimum, though, and I think a lot of Christian churches get this wrong, forgive and stay in relationship. I think that's so abusive. I do not agree with
no,
it. So in your book, you said that you in 1997 left your mom and then didn't see her again. So that was 25 years until she died. Would you
yeah,
make that same choice again?
yes, yes,
Without
yeah.
without
No,
missing a beat.
it's been so wonderful, and living well is the best revenge. I've heard that
Yes.
old phrase, and
Yes.
I went off and had a good life without him, and evidently I found out later that my mom, it really made her mad that I was doing okay and actually getting kind of successful, and it made her mad or resentful or whatever, and I'm like, ha ha
Right.
ha 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 ha. you know
See, and isn't that crazy? Right. They should support that. We come from everything opposite.
yeah,
I come from that as well. I don't
yeah,
feel that I was ever supported for sure.
yeah, but yeah, they resented any success I had, and
Because right, and I saw that you went back and stayed by her for a little bit, right? But then you decided to go. And I think it's a strong message that we need to leave with people that come from homes like this, particularly when it's incestuous and it's your family.
yeah,
Don't stay by these people. Like it's just not good.
yeah,
And I don't think that people realize that it continues to damage us because these are hugely damaged people. And even
yeah,
if they get in counseling, stay.
but you want
Oh, right. And they won't. You know what?
uh,
Very seldom will they. And so I'm not going to
yeah,
say don't forgive and maybe see them a little bit, but be incredibly careful because don't have your
yeah,
children around them. Like I'm,
yeah,
your
do not,
boys weren't raised there.
yeah,
How did you deal with then not having the aunts and uncles and grandparents? My children have had to grow up with a
yeah,
lack of extended family, and that's difficult, right? I'm like, we become
yeah.
everything. It's better than abuse, but tell me how that looked for you and your boys.
Um, yeah, I mean, there was no extended family, and
Mhm.
and a lot of them were kind of abusive too. I mean, some were very abusive, and some were just kind of abusive, and then some were just totally lame and not worth hanging out with. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, we just had really nothing to do with the extended family, and um, yeah, I don't know. They just weren't there. They didn't matter to me. They weren't really close to me when I was a kid, and they didn't help, and there was nothing good there, so I just forgot about them and moved on, you
Right.
know
Which
you
I
know
think that I do think it's the right answer. I see so many people that stay stuck with their families. They want to fix these relationships. God help you, but I felt like God gave me freedom that said, Jody, you can go. You don't have to stay here. And I'm so thankful because I don't know, he's the first freedom fighter I ever met. And he taught me a lot of freedom, and I've been much better
yeah,
as a result of that. But I wanted
yeah,
to talk about you had this one very special relationship in your life, and his name was Danny. And
yeah,
I just think it'd be cool if we just took a little bit of time just to remember him and his story. And I just wanted you to talk a little bit about him. That was a very sad part of your book as well, I thought.
yeah, yeah,
Take your time. And if you don't want to talk about it, you don't need to, for sure.
yeah. I just, I mean, Danny, I just really loved him, and you know, and his life was so bad. It was worse than mine, you know, and and I wish I could have done something to help him, but he actually died. I was too young and he died too early, and I couldn't help him. you know, and I don't know, if he wanted help or if he was happy, in his hardcore gay life, in Portland. He might have been, but but I wasn't in a place to help him, and he needed help, and nobody helped him, you know. And then he died early from AIDS, you know.
Well, and to be fair to his story, I mean, I read it and it broke my heart. For the viewers, Danny was born into a terrible home, and his mother sold her own body until she learned that she would make more money selling her son's body. For that little boy as a victim, he probably moved into homosexuality before he ever even had his own choice to move into that.
Yeah, he
We
didn't
don't, right?
understand.
I mean, we don't have to be our past experiences, but for him, and he didn't have a father, you write about, and he really wanted the love of men, and
Yeah,
so it was just such a broken life. And then he died young of AIDS. It's just heartbreaking because these are the realities of
yeah,
childhood sexual crimes. These are crimes, these are the worst crimes of hell. And
yeah,
I just wanted to stop and honor him and his story because so many of them end in tragedy, right? And they don't make it out very much. And he didn't even have the chance to choose. And you can choose a homosexual lifestyle if you want to, but I don't know if he had a choice. He was
no,
right. And so I just wanted to honor him. I didn't mean to make you upset. I'm
yeah.
sorry, Terry
I
Joe.
I cry a lot,
It's okay. It's okay. But he deserves to have a remembrance for a minute, doesn't he?
Yeah, that's why I wrote this story, is because, it was such an important thing to me that he be remembered. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't care what people think, about homosexual. I don't care what they think about anything. It's
Right.
just, I loved him, and he's gone, and
He didn't have much of a life.
yeah,
Right.
you know,
And you know what? There is a lot of tragedy for all of us that when we have come from really severe abuse in childhood, unfortunately, the people who are around us are usually being abused too, because
yeah.
right, parents like ours won't let good people around. So the only
No,
thing
they
that we
don't.
actually see is bad. I was the same way. Every kid that came into the house was usually abused, and then we'd all start doing stuff together. That
Yeah,
the whole gamut. So anyway, we can move on. Thank you so much for sharing that.
yeah,
It's like me writing about the murdered woman. If I don't tell her story, she's not going to be remembered. And I want to
yeah,
honor these victims that came from such tragedy. So you know what? Thank you for that. I really did just want to
yeah,
do that. So in the time that we have remaining, I like to just kind of open it up for anything that you may have felt that we didn't talk about that's important, any message that you want to leave. So just take your time thinking about this, Terry Joe. And
yeah,
if there's something that you would like to now talk with us about or anything, I'm just going
yeah.
to give you the last few minutes just free flow, just share from your heart. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I think if anybody understands what I'm talking about or can find some common ground there, I'm sorry for you, because that,
But we're here to help
yeah,
normalize it, right?
yeah, I'm sorry that you understand. I wish that nobody understood my story because they didn't have the experience, but
Right.
a lot of people do, and I think it's important to talk about it. And I think from my own experience, I was so broken and abused and stuff that I was so messed up that I think I really believe that only God could fix me,
Mhm.
and I mean, I just got to a point in my life where I just, I got baptized, but I was so broken that, I had to surrender myself to God and pray to Him that whatever it is, I can't fix it. I'm so broken, only you can fix it, and fix me the way you want me to be because I don't have a clue, you know.
Mhm.
And, I got baptized, and, I started feeling His presence. But, every day, I pray, to help me do your will and help me be what you want me to be because I don't know. And whenever, like, the daily challenges that come along, I pray again, to have me react the way you want me to, because whatever I did in the past ain't working, you know. And my husband noticed right away that I was like a completely different person,
I love
and
that.
and I think that he could say it was a miracle from God too, and
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
so I just kept depending on God to help me make the right choices, um and trust him to help me get better, and a little bit every day, it got better and better, so I would just recommend that anybody, if you're feeling broken, confused, and suicidal or whatever, to just run to the nearest Christian church and throw yourself in the door, and get baptized, and and then depend on God to help you get better, you know and because your other choices aren't very good, so you might as well. You know?
Well, it's a great way to put it.
Yeah,
I had to do a lot of counseling because of, the murder thing really kind of got me in there because I felt really haunted from this lady that I watched be murdered. But anyway, the point was is that a lot of times you're right. The counselors and the books can tell us the problem, but a broken heart that can only be healed at the throne of
yeah,
God. It really can. And
yeah,
I'm a firm believer in that because he really brought in, well, I love my counselor and he helped me tremendously in life. God was the one that restored my heart. It's a really
yeah.
beautiful way to put it. Now I have to ask because the guitars behind you are absolutely amazing. Can you
I
tell me a little bit
know.
about those?
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah. Over the years, we've been buying guitars, and what's kind of awesome is they're all like really expensive, but most of them we got on clearance sale and stuff.
It's awesome. They're gorgeous.
Yeah,
So, do you and your
I
husband
know.
both play?
Actually, I really suck. I have no talent, and actually, I can't move my hand in the correct way to do the fingering. I think that's another thing from the child abuse, is that
Oh,
things are kind of scarred and twisted and broken in my hand. But he can play really good. I'm
that's
kind of more.
awesome.
I've been play. I got some drums now. I'm starting to play the drums. I think I'm more of a drum girl and not a guitar girl. But my sweetie plays really well, and
That's awesome.
he even plays in the church band. At church.
How
So
cool.
yeah, keeping him busy. But
I
yeah,
love it.
he also plays the bass too. So we got the guitars, we got the bass.
And that's a
And
banjo up there, right?
oh, that one we have a banjo, but that's I have a banjo, but I kind of suck at that too. But
But at least you're trying because I'll tell you what,
yeah,
music to me has been the most releasing, rewarding thing I've ever done. I just love music.
yeah,
And I'm having a bad day if I can't hear the music. That's what I say. So anyway,
yeah,
all right, Terry Jo, is there anything else? I want to thank you so much for your vulnerability being here. This has been so rewarding. We've just started this, but I'll tell you, it's really being received well. And I thank you so much for just being authentic and sharing that because it really does help another person that can relate. It helps them understand that there are a whole lot more of us out here, and we do need to just try to destigmatize this because we were all victims, right? And so
yeah.
they don't want to talk about it, but we do. So thank you so very much, Terry Jo. I appreciate it so much, and we'll be in touch. Okay.
Great. Well, thanks for
All
having
right.
me.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah. Yeah. Bye.
Bye.